Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, is my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell, Charles. I'm excited because you've got a new pitch this week. It's got a fun name.
I do have a pitch.
It's got quirky characters.
It does.
I don't know if they are quirky or not because you haven't said it yet, but I assume they are.
They're pretty quirky. There's a reasonably high level of quirk going on here. Lots of fun names. I had a lot of fun coming up with the names of these characters, by the way. Which I know you love to hear, because my naming conventions have always been to your liking. You've never thought they were stupid or ridiculous.
Well, every once in a while they are, but you got some good names in there. Some quality.
Captain William Rye is our main character. The casual helmsman of the Shadow-class subfreighter, blank. I haven't thought of a name for the Shadow-class subfreighter yet. I was hoping that we could come up with a good name for the ship. You know?
The Shadow-class subfreighter.
It is a Shadow-class subfreighter, yes.
Oh, I think it's glass.
Would you like me to explain what a...
I don't know.
No, Shadow-class.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Alright, well, in this universe, there are, believe it or not, spaceships, right? Lots of them. And the huge, massive spaceships are all run by, like, massive corporations or governments or stuff like that. Shadow-class ships is just a very nice way of saying, like, scavengers or vultures, you know? They're fleets of ships that follow these massive, massive ships, follow behind them and basically just pick apart the, remains of whatever this massive ship has destroyed, right?
Okay.
So that's what a Shadow-class ship is. The show is called, I should mention, A Shadow in the Sun, right?
Ah, what a great title. Who came up with that? That's amazing.
Good. You came up with the title. I feel like the Operatic Soul Destroyer was a title I wasn't supposed to take seriously, but I did take it seriously. I made a serious show about it. And this title is a little bit like, maybe I should take it seriously. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make a silly billy, like, space sitcom show.
What do you mean take it seriously? Like you would say a show about a literal shadow? Like
no, like a show about, like, I don't know, God or art or something. Like real heavy-duty, emotional topics that we don't know very much about because we're not
says the guy who just
people.
did Operatic Soul Destroyer the other week, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take that one seriously. And so I've kind of given myself permission to be a little bit of silly with this one. So Captain William Rye, you're going to notice that there's quite a bit of food-related naming conventions in this show. He is like I said, casual helmsman of this ship, which we have to name, but I'm confident we can come up with a good name for it. He's not really very interested in the day-to-day running of his ship, often leaving that responsibility to his first mate and platonic hetero life mate, Henry Thunk, who is thankless in his work. Rye is a man with very little patience for morons, and often being short-tempered when he finds one. So that's our main character, Captain William Rye. He's a bit lazy, he's a bit short-tempered, but he's also very charismatic. He's able to keep the crew together, and his whims kind of dictate what the crew does. He wants to go in a certain... Yeah, exactly. He wants to go in a direction for 6 months for no discernible reason. They're doing it, right? And Henry Thunk is the man whose entire job is making sure that happens, right? And he is, like I said, the thankless first mate and platonic life partner to William Henry Rye. I've also put platonic in quotation marks, because maybe it's not platonic. We don't know.
Oh.
Things are crazy in space. In space, no one can hear you be gay, maybe a little bit gay with your first mate, But
what a
William
weird way
Rye's
to say that.
wild
In space, no
What?
one can hear you. What?
In space, no one can hear you be gay with your life.
Do you want me to cut that out? You want me to drop that one?
Person to me. What's wrong with it?
I don't know. I just don't know how to react to it, to be honest.
I don't think that you're reacting badly. Do you think I'm reacting badly? I don't. I feel like this is a perfectly reasonable thing to say.
It's certainly not a very reasonable.
It's a very reasonable pilot. So that's William Rye and Henry Thunk, and they're kind of this like odd couple duo who are at the center of many of the adventures that this ship goes on, right? And we have a litany of other characters. Up here, our next character being Susan Frank. Now, Susan Frank is basically, imagine like a supermodel, right? She is gorgeous, but everyone just calls her Frank. So imagine Margot Robbie, but called Frank and has the demeanor of somebody whose name is Frank. Like, she's smoking, she's drinking, she curses, she doesn't give a shit. You know, she doesn't dress up nice, that sort of thing. And she works as the quartermaster of the ship, oftentimes pulling a part-time shift as hen mother and part-time fixer for the crew if they're ever getting up into any illegal jobs or anything like that. So she's kind of like the matriarch. She keeps everything going with regards of the crew, you know? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And our next character is Theodore Macadamia. All right. I told you there'd be a lot of food. Okay. Theodore Macadamia is an eccentric billionaire who is funding a deep-sea exploration into the heart of Earth's oceans, as well as being the ship's AI model that has completely lost its mind. So, in actuality, Theodore Macadamia is this, like, the AI's fantasy human that they want to be. Our next character is Dr. Hoover, the humorless medical practitioner of the ship, who seemingly only experiences joy while performing unethical and dangerous experiments upon animals and members of the crew. Right? So, imagine part Frankenstein, part Mr. Smith, right? Like, he's just humorless. Mm-hmm. Complete, not a funny bone in this man's entire body. The only time you ever see him smile is when he's doing downright devious experiments, right?
I can relate to him already.
His humorlessness will come back into play at some point. I will tell you that much for free, because...
For free? Do we have to pay for the rest?
It's one of the jokes. For free! Our next character is Winona Helix, and she is the heavy of the crew, providing ample violence for all of their devious and odd schemes that they get up to constantly, you know? So she's the muscle, she's the hunky lady who could beat everyone up, you know? She's the scariest one. And she also has a strange past that we will get into later as a part of her character, because everybody's got a strange past that leads to a planet that we'll have an adventure on, because that's really how I want to set the show up, is that it's more of like a rotating cast comedy, or not rotating cast, but like it's an ensemble comedy where the jokes and the episode ideas come from the cast rather than the setting, you know? So the setting is just like kind of an excuse to get them all in the same place at the same time, right? So they're all following this, you know, ship. We'll call it the Apollo. And it's a massive governmental, you know, fleet destroyer. And they're following, and they just pick at the wreckage of what's left behind. And they find all sorts of weird shit in the remnants of the spaceships. Believe it or not, they have weird stuff in space.
What?
Did you believe that? Yeah, I know. Especially in fictional space that we make up, right? Mm-hmm. Our next character is Piston Junkie.
What a name.
He is the engineer.
What a name.
Yeah, I know, right?
The other ones were good, but that one's a killer name. Piston Junkie.
Yeah. So Piston Junkie comes from a Mad Max style, like, post-apocalypse world, and he has levied his knowledge and innate skill with engines to get onto a ship, and works as their kind of grease monkey engineer, and he rarely ever leaves the bowels of the engine, but you see him pop up because he, like, scurries around through the walls. Imagine Nux from Mad Max. You know, he's the skinny little guy, and he's got, like, no hair, and he has these big goggles on, and he's constantly greasy and dusty and dirty, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, he's Mad Max, but from Fury Road style character. But he is also a savant and a genius when it comes to engines and ships and stuff like that.
You'd hope so.
Yeah, you certainly would. And then we have Science Officer O'Neill, who is the government employee tasked with monitoring the salvage of the ship. So O'Neill's job is basically she comes onto the ship and she watches them do the salvage to make sure they're not getting anything like nukes or chemical weapons or drugs or, you know, anything like that. And she is kind of the wet blanket of the crew. Everybody else is on what... from one level to another, be like crazy and exciting and interesting and wants to get up to like all sorts of stuff, whereas Science Officer O'Neill is just like a big wet blanket, and she likes following the rules and doing what the government says and, you know, being in charge. And so all of the schemes kind of have to be hidden away from her, you know? And I promise we're gonna get away from our last three. We're get away from the characters, but we have three more. But these are our salvagers, right? And so they are, think death row inmates meets, like, you know, indentured servants, right? They are 150% expendable. And these three guys that I'm going to tell you about are the three main salvagers, but there's going to be more salvagers who die all the time. And these three guys are going to make it through because they're kind of our three stooges, you know, our monkey, or like, see no evil, hear no evil, say no evil. Why am I saying evil? Evil, right?
Evil.
And so our first guy is Maximus Stanley, a salvager with a superiority complex and a strange obsession with craft beer. So every time they salvage a new ship, he is always looking for craft beer. And surprisingly enough, he finds it more often than you would think, you know? Turns out, like, IPAs and sours and milkshake stouts are pretty popular in space. And so he's just constantly annoying people. Why wouldn't they be? He's constantly annoying people with his craft beer obsession. Mm-hmm. And then we have Hercham Tent. Hercham Tent is a gambling addict turned salvager who is constantly making bets and getting himself into trouble, right? So he was this billionaire, like, scion to a fortune, but through years of just gambling, degenerate gambling, he lost the entire family fortune and eventually got himself stuck in a salvaging job. And so he is now, like, he was this rich guy and now he has no money and he is living in the bowels of this ship salvaging, but still managing to get himself into trouble with big, you know, big bets. Oh, I bet today I'll bet you $20 today we'll come across a ship that has 2 live animals on it, right? And stuff like that. But it always gets him into trouble because he's a degenerate gambling addict. And the last of our important salvagers is Matthew Spears, but spelled like the weapon, not like Britney Spears.
Okay.
And Matthew Spears is a religious fanatic of the Church of Latter Pyramid Creationists who's constantly trying to spread and convince people of his absolutely ridiculous religion. And if you want to know about the Latter-day Pyramid Creationists, I will tell you happily. They are a religion that believe that the pyramids were not created by human beings thousands of years ago. In fact, the pyramids were built by the English explorers who brought the cameras to Egypt for the first time. and the entire reason that the pyramids were there is so that the English could take photos of them. So he believes that the English explorers in the 1800s built the pyramids and then just made them look really old for the cameras, because that's it's more interesting to boost Egyptian tourism, right? Good religion, right? You'd believe that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You're gullible.
Oh, okay. Thanks, John.
Yeah. So those are our main characters. Those are our characters, right? And each of these characters, I have an episode idea, like, tied into them, or most of them, right? But a lot of it involves siblings. So, here's my idea for Henry Thunk, right? Again, if we've forgotten, because it was 10 minutes ago, the platonic life partner to Captain William Rye and the person who keeps the ship running, right? Thankless in his work. Turns out Henry Thunk has a series of brothers, Donald Thwump, Richard Clank, Stephen Pow.
You're making them up right now, aren't you?
Well, no, his brothers are all onomatopoeias. Right, that's their whole thing. He's Henry Thunk, and then his brothers are Thwank, Pow.
They're his brothers, though, right?
Pop. Yeah.
Wait, okay, so
it's
their
the
names...
future.
Okay.
Guys.
All right.
Yeah, it's the future. Everybody's got different names. But they're all there's like 15 brothers, and they all look exactly the same. And they are all more successful than Henry, and they all, Henry has to come to terms with the fact that he is the least successful of 15 siblings. And then, they get into a big fight on the ship because I haven't figured out, do you think that the brothers should visit, or should Henry visit the brothers? I think Henry should visit the brothers, right? Like, one day he is talking with Captain William Rye at the cockpit of the ship, and they're, discussing family, and William Rye is talking about how his father was a bastard, and his brother was an even bigger bastard, and the biggest bastard of all was his mother, and Henry mentions that he has brothers, but he doesn't really talk about them, and William, feeling, like, not bad, but like, I should do something nice for him, gets in contact with all of his brothers and invites all of the brothers to the ship for a family reunion. But Henry Thunk, is completely taken aback by this, because he hasn't seen his brothers in 10 years, and they're all doing much better than him. But then at the end of the episode, it is revealed that, in fact, all of the brothers are first mates for captains of ships with bread names. That's what I think. Is that too much?
No.
So, Henry Thunk is the first mate to Captain William Rye, and then Michael Bamp. Michael Bamp is the first mate to Captain Richard Sourdough, and that sort of thing. And all 15 brothers are like that, and they were just trying to make Henry seem worse than he is, because they're all jealous of Henry, because he has the nicest captain. He's the most even-tempered captain.
That's nice, I guess.
And then it's nice in like a pathetic way, because that's kind of what I'm going for with this show. It's like a found family situation, but if you hated your found family as much as you hated your regular family, So everyone's pathetic, everyone's sad, but that's kind of the point of space, is that it's all horrible all the time, but at least it's more horrible for that guy than it is for me, And that's kind of the philosophical point of the show, I guess. If there is any. Do you think there's a philosophical point to the show, or am I just rambling? I am rambling a little bit.
Know. You probably made it up just now.
No, I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about the show. I've been working on this show. Theodore Macadamia, again, he just serves as kind of like background joke fodder. Dr. Hoover, right? Again, like I said, humorless doctor, but one day he is invited to his family reunion, and the entire crew, encourages him to go, and they all pile in the ship, and they all go down to the surface of the planet, and turns out he is from the much maligned and often hated upon pun world. And that is Dr. Hoover's greatest shame, is that he is from Pun World, a world dedicated solely to comedy and jokes, and he has no sense of humor. And if you're wondering,
like you.
His first name, Dr. Hoover, Dr. Sherbert Hoover.
Oh. Because he makes ice cream.
The entire character was built around the idea of Dr. Sherbert Hoover, but I think it's really funny.
It is. I like that.
Dr. Sherbert Hoover is, this absolutely humorless guy, and he's brought back to his homeworld where everyone is a jokester and everyone's a comedian. He's like the odd one out, and he's the total nerd, and no one likes him. And then the entire crew, gets together and puts together this comedy set for him to perform at his family reunion to try and win over all of his friends and family. And he absolutely bombs the show. Like, it's pathetic. He has no sense of timing. He has no sense of like rhythm for his jokes or anything like that. And then he decides that the only course of action for a well-reasoned medical professional such as himself is to release the deadly nerve toxin he has been working on in his lab for the last few days and kill thousands of people upon Pun World, all whilst the crew of the Shadow-class subfreighter Michelin make their escape. That's the name of the ship now, I've decided, because you wouldn't help.
The Michelin Star.
The Michelin Star Tribune. What do you think? Should it be Michelin?
I don't know. I kind of like the Michelin Star now that I've made the joke, but...
Yeah. You know what? I'm writing it down. It's being written down. Michelin Star.
The Michelin Star.
Yeah.
Because it used to be... It's converted. It used to be a restaurant that was called the Michelin Star.
Great.
And they all think it was a fancy restaurant, but it was literally just called the Michelin Star.
Yeah, it was a food truck. Mm-hmm. That's the way that Henry Rye was able to get this ship so cheap, because he's not a good captain. I think we've thoroughly determined he's a terrible fucking captain. I mean, his first mate does everything for him. He doesn't know how to fly. He barely knows how to fly the ship. Yeah, and then of course we have Winona Helix, and she comes from a family of supervillains who are bent on destroying the world taking over the galaxy with their, super high intelligence, and they're your crazy machines. But Winona is just she's a fighter, right? She doesn't like to use her brain. And the crew has to help Winona prove to her parents and her family and her disapproving father that evil is just as capable of being wrought by physical violence as it is through machinery. And that's the lesson of the show, I think, that episode. Because I really want to do bad lessons for each episode. Just like, people don't laugh at your jokes, kill them with nerve gas. Your siblings are doing better than you. Actually, they're all liars. Your parents don't approve, just kill enough people till they approve of you, Bad lessons like that. Because in space, no one cares that you're screaming. Yeah. And some ideas I had for episodes is the ship accidentally picks up a living weapon organism, and the crew has to assemble a gigantic, massive, deadly robot to kill the organism. And I'm thinking it's like a pastiche, like on Alien or The Thing, It's got the ability to shapeshift, but it also likes to crawl through the walls, and the the crew of the Shadow class subfreighter Michelin Star aren't the most, intelligent people, and so they see a, dangerous organism sign. Their first thought is, I want to crack open the container and see what's living inside. They crack it open, and this alien, basically, an episode of an alien movie, like, gets onto the ship and starts killing people, always killing the salvagers who are unnamed. And like going through the walls and tearing things up and all this stuff.
I hope they're like screaming, no, wait, quick, say my name, and then he gets his head cut off. Say my name! He gets his entire jaw ripped off, and I was like, didn't even know your name was blah, 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 blah. And then he falls over dead. And I want the episode to end, right? They've all, been hiding, and they've been hunting this animal, this creature, but they've had no luck. And eventually, Dr. Sherbert Hoover and Susan Frank and Piston Junkie to get together, and they use all of their skills and their knowledge, and they put together this massive robot. Think, like, I don't know, all of the ideas I have for this robot, like all of the references, are so niche that I'm not sure you're gonna get them. But do you know if you've ever seen Hellraiser? The engineer from Hellraiser, he's a big guy who lives in the walls, and he like, or if you've ever seen Robots with Ewan McGregor and what's his name, the genie, Robin Williams. They have a big chompy robot, like street cleaner things, and so they build one of these massive like robots that take up basically the entire hallway. And they just sick it on the organism, and eventually the robot catches and kills this organism, but the crew doesn't know how to turn off the robot either, so they eventually just manage to lock it into one of the massive labyrinthian, like, underground, under layers of the ship, and now the crew has effectively built a sort of, like, Minotaur in the Labyrinth situation just by accident. And that's, like, in episode 1, and at the end of the series, right, episode 10 of the season, the robot from the Labyrinth comes out and he kills the bad guy that has the true crew captive, of course, because that's how these things go in shows like this, yeah. That's what I had. Do you have any episode ideas, or should I just keep going with some of the episode ideas I have? Let's hear what you got next. I'm excited.
I had an idea for, and this always happens in all of my space shows, but I just love the idea of space pirates so much that I'm like, surely the crew has to be captured by space pirates at some point, right?
Yeah.
The space pirates are great. And so they're, following the Apollo space freighter, right? And they're scavenging and salvaging through the ships that it leaves in its wake. And they scavenge this, what once was a pirate ship, right? And they discover all of these cool treasures, and they find swords and guns and gold and stuff like that. But the thing that catches William Rye's attention, for real, is this map that will take them to the, Shangri-La of space pirates. This supposedly magically, concealed port that hides them from all governmental or corporate, cameras and tracking devices, right? And so Captain William Rye follows the ship, follows the extremely circuitous map, and eventually comes upon this Shangri-La for pirates. What should we call it? Space-Ra-La.
A Shangri-La for pirates.
That's terrible.
What's the place from Pirates of the Caribbean? Is it Tortuga?
Tortuga. We can call it Tortuga.
Yeah.
Like Tortuga. So
you should say it like that too.
Tortuga, yeah, dude. They come upon Tortuga. And, at first they are all having a great time. They make a bunch of friends, right, with other ships, and they're, all this stuff, until eventually the pirates figure out that Captain William Rye is not a pirate. He is, in fact, just a shadow, a scavenger, scum. Ooh. And they get captured and are,
their ship is captured and they're captured and they're, you know, taken prisoner upon their own ship. The greatest indignity you can ever have as being a spacefaring individual, right? And they are brought out to the corner of explored space where they're going to be executed and killed. And that's when William Rye tricks them into opening the labyrinth door and letting the giant robot out that chomps them all up and kills them all and lets our faithful heroes escape once again, right?
Oh.
I was also thinking, because in shows like this, I enjoy the, like, evil version situation. I would think it would be funny if, because the ship they're following is the Apollo, right? And they are a shadow class, right? And so I think it would be funny if there was another ship that there was another, like, massive governmental facility, and that's, like, the, you know, Blue Whale or something. And they also have a bunch of other much smaller vessels following them, and they're called minnows. And, you know, these two massive fleet, or, like, freighter ships, you know, this, like, two governmental ships, I don't know how else to say it, start attacking each other because they're, you know, in conflict. And in the meantime, all of the shadows and all of the minnows, right, basically come together and they have basically a watch along, like a watch party. And they're like, whoever, you know, fails, whoever dies, the, you know, people who was following them get to go through all their shit, and then we'll all leave. You know, it's fine. We're vultures watching the battle take place, and figuring out who we get to pick the meat from the bones of. Is that correct grammar? Pick the meat from the bones of?
I don't care.
I care? What do you mean you don't care? You can be a goddamn
so
lawyer.
you don't need to
You gotta
speak
care about
incorrect grammar. You don't need to speak incorrect grammar. People don't do it all the time. You haven't been doing it for this whole podcast. Now all of a sudden you make one sentence and you want it to be in correct grammar. Like just go on, continue.
Yes. Okay. And that's the episode, is our characters, you know, meeting their equal and opposite reactions, and you know, getting into all sorts of fun little adventures with them, you know? Mm-hmm. Little things like that. I think that this is a Shadow in the Sun, no one can hear you, no one cares that you're screaming, is a very casual show, right? I want to give the impression that there is a lot of stuff happening outside of the purview of our cameras, right? Oh. So, like, the introduction to the show, right, will be like this, and I'm talking about, like, the intro 30 seconds, right? The title cards will be like this super cool, slick space battle is happening, and then we pan past the space battle and pan towards the massive, like, starship carrier that's all these ships are going from to fight in the space battle, and then we pan past that, and we pan to, like, the destruction left in the wake of this massive space battle, and these massive, like, carcasses of huge ships, you know, they're just floating past these, you know, little tiny ships, and then we pan past those big carcasses, and we zoom in close on these little ships until we get to one called the Michelin Star, and then we zoom in even closer until we get to the dining hall of the Michelin Star, and it's all of our main characters sitting at the dining room, like, talking and smoking and, like, fucking with each other and laughing. And then a shadow in space. And in the background, we see, like, a bunch of corpses of people, like, choking to death in the vacuum of space, staring into the windows and seeing our main characters, like, laughing and joking and all this stuff.
Yeah. That would be actually great for, like, either the intro or the beginning of the first episode. You're, like, following this one guy, and he has this really emotional story. Like, maybe he just messaged his, like, family back home, and now he's running out, and he has, like, this super dangerous role. Like, maybe he's a fighter pilot, and he's fighting in the battle. His ship, like, crashes into the enemy carrier. He's on the ship fighting brutally. He has this epic moment where he destroys the ship from the inside, but it blows up, and it... You know, he gets knocked into the vacuum of space, and he has a helmet on, and he, like, thinks he's gonna be fine, and then, you know, like, out of pure
like
unluckiness,
a rock flies out.
Yeah, a rock or some debris cracks it, and his oxygen's slowly going down, and we're just with him as it's like, you have 1 minute left of oxygen, 30 seconds left of oxygen, 20 seconds left of oxygen, 10 seconds left of oxygen, and then he sees, like, he sees our ship, the Michelin Star, just come by. And he looks into the glass and he sees like somebody peeing in a toilet, and then they click a button and the piss just shoots out and hits him in the mask, and the last thing he breathes is piss before he dies.
It's piss, and then he chokes to death in space. I like that. See, I think that's the kind of mood we're trying to do for this show. Yeah, a shadow in the sun. Shadow in the sun.
I like that show a lot. I think it's pretty fun. I did have a question though about how big the ship is, because you said other scavengers would be dying in that, like, the alien episode. So is it like kind of like a big ship, and there's like other crew members that we don't really talk to?
Yeah, I would say that it's, in terms of, I want the scale to be kind of like 40K, like just so insanely huge that it's difficult to comprehend. So, like, imagine that our ship is the size of, like, a town of, like, 2,000 people, right? Like, that's the number of people that live on the ship, and that's, like, like, maybe 100 people live on the ship, but you ever drive through a small town, right, of, like, 2,000 to 5,000 people? That's about the size of the ship in terms of, like, real estate, right? But then the big ships that they follow, the actual freighters, are the size of like 3 New York cities piled on top of each other.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's just so massive, and there's so many millions of people on these ships that you can't comprehend how big they are, you know, in comparison, because it's space.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say it's a big ship. They got lots of... It's pretty much all they got, I would say. And I think you and I play some expendable scavengers who keep coming back, but with different mustaches.
Yeah, we're always getting killed by whatever. We can make that joke that I said where, like, when the alien's coming in, and I'm like, quick, say my name, so I don't have to die. And you're, like, about to open your mouth, and then both of us get fucking stabbed
a knife through my back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I had for my show. Not the longest episode or the most deeply complex, I know, but in my defense, I've been traveling a lot recently, and I feel like there were some fun gags for it.
You love to shit on
show.
your shows at the end of them. You're always like, yeah, I know it sucks.
I do.
But usually they're very good, and you're like, it's funny.
Yeah. Usually they're the operatic Soul Destroyer, a show I was very happy with.
Well, no, I mean, I like this one a lot. I like when we do these light shows because they're fun. They're more fun.
They are fun. And oh my god, I don't have a title for you. Holy shit.
Do you actually not?
I left my list of titles at home.
Oh my god.
What was it?
How about?
Oh my god, wait, no.
How about you pick?
I have
4 titles here, and you could pick one for me, for my list, for my next show.
How about this? This is a good idea, I think. I have a ton of vinyl records in front of me. So I am going to run my finger along the record, right? Along the box of records, and you tell me when to stop, and I'll give you the title based off of the record.
Stop.
All right? Wait, no, let me start.
I was over you. That was my joke.
I'm starting. I've started. I'm going.
Wait. I thought you were going to say starting now. Go back to the beginning and say starting now so that
Oh my god. All right. Starting now.
Stop.
All right. Let's see what you got. Ooh, actually one of my favorite records of all time. This is King Tuff's Was Dead from Burger Records.
Okay, so I would do Was Dead.
I think Was Dead is a very good title.
It's a good title. And I actually have a show that I've half written, which is why I want it, that kind of works with that title. So,
God damn it. You son of a bitch.
That's why I want to do Was Dead.
I should have just said Res Publica Season 4.
Yeah, again, you fucked up. I thought you were going to do that. I really thought you were going to say that. I was scared. You'd make me read a whole book.
You're busy, man.
Again.
I make you read too, yeah.
All right, well, thank you everyone for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles Long. With me as always been my co-host, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jake Gloth. If you like what you heard here, and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. Remember, we'll be here next week with a brand new televisual series for you to imagine and enjoy. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on TikTok, on Instagram, on all sorts of stuff. All right? Go watch the reels and the shorts and the TikToks.
What are the names, Charlie? Do you even remember?
What?
The handles. Can't just tell the people to watch us on Instagram. You got to say where it is. What do I type in?
You're right. This is I fucked up. I should have done that. I should have gotten that up earlier. At Very Reasonable Pilots. All right, everyone. And Jake has a surprise for us right now that he's going to do.
It's